Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. I also would like to thank Zan and Thomas for inviting me and the company I represent to this conversation, because that speaks of the inclusiveness that has been, the intention, I'm assuming, seeing how many stakeholders you have gathered around this theme for this conference. And it's true that I have inhabited pretty much all the main worlds that have been explored with this conversation in previous chapters of my career, which gives me the great privilege of having a lot of colleagues and friends in this room. This conversation about PepsiCo and the role of food and beverage, the food and beverage industry in this space, you're going to have to interpret it for now as my early thoughts about having joined this new world a year ago. And it was done primarily, I thought you were going to say it, but I'm going to say it, it was done primarily out of frustration of understanding, after many years of studying mechanism of disease and then eventually drug development, how untreatable the problem of chronic metabolic diseases is from an economic point of view. So I asked myself, if I have to spend another 10, 15 years in this space, what would be a good use of my experience? And I have decided to join PepsiCo for a couple of reasons. First of all, about the company, despite the name on the door, PepsiCo is a fully integrated food and beverage company with more than 200 products across categories that span the range of very indulgent to very nutritious offerings. But I have to say that one of the things that sold it to me as somebody who was trying to have an impact on public health was what you read in the first sentence. This is a company that touches the life of 1.5 billion people every 24 hours. And so the scale of that reach is such a responsibility, especially for people like me coming with a very heavy scientific and public health background, but also a tremendous opportunity, probably the biggest I've given myself throughout my career in terms of a potential impact. And so the challenge is to advise a company that operates in more than 200 countries with such a scale of business to make decisions on how to further develop the portfolio and bring to our consumers better and better options from a nutritional point of view. And Dr. Meyers from FDA mentioned these efforts within the industry of improving the nutritional choices across the portfolio. We started this effort as PepsiCo as a voluntary effort ahead of the recommendation of the FDA, and obviously the efforts have been brought under that umbrella now, and I'm showing here the progress that we're making by reducing added sugars, sodium, and saturated fats in our product portfolio with some tangible measurements of where we are today and where we want to go by 2025. That's about the company, if I can have the next slide. But I think we're here to discuss aging, longevity, and something that we are starting to refer to more as vitality. And it has been said that this has been a very US-centric discussion, and that's probably true. So probably one of the thoughts for future versions of this would be to have a more worldwide look at what's happening in this space. And I've been very impressed speaking a couple of months ago with officers of the Chinese government and trying to convince them that we are developing, this great ideas about aging in the Western world, and them humbling me with this statistics and saying, Dr. Tataranni, do you want to understand something about this scale? Keep in mind that people aged 60 and over in China, at this moment, number in greater numbers than almost the entire US population. So it's a problem on a global scale, and I think it would be good to keep an eye on the fact that that's the case. The other, I mean, all of these points have been made before, so I'm not gonna double down on any of them. But one that speaks to me very painfully, and it's something that it's, I believe, very acute in the US, but it's also appearing more and more in Europe and eventually in the Eastern world, is that people at the end of the month have to make choices between whether to pay for food or whether to pay for medicines. And I think we, as a community of scientists that has been at this for many, many decades, I think we have a huge responsibility in trying to solve this for people that found themselves in this pretty incredible predicament. Now, how do we look at vitality or aging from our point of view? Obviously, we look at it through the eyes of the consumers. And consumers, somebody said it earlier this morning, don't like to be addressed as elderly or old people. They like to continue to maintain a certain level of functionality across all of these domains. So we look at the physiology of things and how the advancing of the years in our life robs us of some of the things that are more characteristics of the physiology of the early years. And so muscle mass and strength, we have seen all the molecular biology behind it, but in consumer terms, this is basically losing a little bit the vitality from the muscle perspective that was there before. What intrigues me in the space of metabolic disorders is that we often forget that as we get older, we lose a little bit the sense of taste, and what does that mean in terms of food choices, decline in memory, mood, digestive health, constipation. So this is the lens through which we try to approach the problem with functional food solutions or food solutions and food and beverage solutions in general. And we truly believe that our place as PepsiCo and more generally as the industry is to play into the space of health extension with diet and exercise, allow people to live a happier life for a longer period of time. Besides the theory, I will give you one example of the fact that we not only talk about things and not only relate on the rather problematic nutritional epidemiology science that is out there, as it was mentioned before by one of the speakers. I think it was again Dr. Myers. We run our own clinical trials. And under my responsibility, I have 20 of those. I thought in the transition I was going to get rid of that responsibility, but that's not the case. And this is an example of a fantastic trial that my team has conducted on the tail of similar success in the US population in China earlier this year, where we have tested the lipid-lowering effect of oats that contain a special fiber, which is called beta-glucan, that has properties in this sense. And you see that 3 grams of beta-glucan for a couple of weeks has the potential of reducing cholesterol by up to 10%, not only in the US, but also in China. And this is just about to be published and be part of a campaign that we will run together with health authorities and the Nutritional Society in China. And because we have sufficient data now, one of the things that we want to do next is a sub-analysis in the elderly of these results. So again, if I can, okay, now a large company like ours is in the midst of the discussion on how food systems in general should be improved. I mean, it's no longer possible from the space in which we operate to disassociate choices that relate to how we produce, distribute, and commercialize foods and beverages from their impact on the planet at large. And that's another dimension that perhaps I want to introduce and requires exploration as we talk about solutions that might be good for people but not so good for the planet. And we have to deal with this multidimensional space all the time because we operate at a scale that doesn't absolve us from attacking all of these problems all the time. And my last two slides, if I can have the next one, I think the clicker is going dead here. Next slide, please. There you go. Let me finish with a mention of the fact that as we continue to improve our choices across the portfolio, we are committed as a company, and for the large part as an industry, to a number of sustainability priorities which are self-explanatory and we can address if you want in the Q&A portion of the session. So, to conclude from my point of view, if I can have the last slide, we really think that there is an opportunity here to be addressed in a very collaborative fashion, and I think that with this thoughts, I have, if not convinced you, at least provoked the thought that the food and beverage industry should be seen as part of the solution as opposed to the cliche of being part of the problem. Thank you very much.